It is such a relief to see the scaffolding finally coming down on buildings all around my little house in London. It's a great time. I bought my little house in London for £18,650 almost 60 years ago. I must admit it's gone up a bit in value since then, mainly because, as you can see, all the houses around have had planning permission to extend their roofs much larger, making them considerably more valuable. We had such a great reaction to the Eurovision special last week that we're doing a second one this week. The favourite in 2023 to win Eurovision is Sweden with Loreen. Loreen had an entry way back 10 or more years ago, which I heard as a demo. It's called Euphoria. It sounded like such a dead cert hit to me that I stuck £100 on it at 7-1, or rather on Sweden, and of course it romped home and made me £700. I ended up actually staying in the same hotel as Loreen a few years later in Morocco, when she starred at a big festival there like Glastonbury called Mawazine, and I thanked her for the £700. Very nice lady, but I have to admit I don't think much of the current entry she's got. I don't think it is a winner. And if you want to know what I think is the winner, I choose the same country that I chose last year, rather unusually, the United Kingdom. Although our Molly May entry is incredibly derivative and sounds like about 3 or 4 other hit records, it's the best of a bad bunch, and I think it could win. As it's now 50-1, I think that definitely could do with a tenner on it. Anyway, I did make quite a few entries for Eurovision, none of which got through to the finals or won the thing in the last 15 or 20 years. I think perhaps my favourite of all was this one by Gloria Gorgeous. What's a Girl to Do? Ooh la la la, sha la la la, hey la la la, gorilla la, ooh la la la, sha la la la, hey la la la.
When I saw you standing at the bar, I knew you were going to be a star. Something told me we would go far. That was then, now here we are. Things don't always go quite as planned. Sometimes the singer's out of time with the band. I looked in your eyes, I held on to your hand, and sadly knew where we stand. You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? After day You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? You don't love me, but I do love you. I know the feeling will cut like a knife when I pass you on the street with your kids and your wife. I won't be wishing you trouble and strife, but a really happy life. You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? You don't love me, but I do love you. What's a girl to do? You don't love me, but I do love you.
Apologies again for the awful quality. I love this video though, especially the mad choreography at the end here. I think red rather suits me, except of course when I'm in a total vacuum, which seems to be the case. I gather these are the new tiny miniature little phones that are being smuggled into prisons in Her Majesty's estate. You might not think that's a very important thing to know, but it is interesting because the estate claims that all prisoners these days have access to mobile phones. The reality is far from true. I remember when I was in prison, they said no prisons contained people having to share more than one person or two people in a cell. And the actual reality was I saw several people, several times there were 3 or even 4 people sharing a tiny cell meant for one person with one tiny toilet that everybody had to use, sometimes while other inmates were eating their meals. Absolutely disgraceful. I love this time of year in London. All the colours come out in the street, and most beautiful of all, down almost every street in the centre of London, is cherry blossom. Watching the pink and light blue and yellow and white cherry blossom all over town is one of the great joys of being a Londoner. By the way, since Brexit, I've stopped calling myself English or British, and I now am a Londoner. The other huge argument at the moment seems to be around the transgender issue. This again has become, like so many things this century, polarised between one extreme and the other, whereas of course the real honest truth lies somewhere in the middle. But still people seem incapable of doing anything other than just going to one extreme or the other. So people either howl that transgender people deserve to be treated as completely 100% whatever they choose to be. Therefore, men, of course, who say they are women can use women's changing rooms and toilets and all the other things that go with being able to be what you say you are. I, by the way, am a major pop star and heartthrob. Then there's the other extreme of the people who are basically and essentially bigots and who basically and essentially are opposed to absolutely everything that isn't fitting their norm, usually a religious norm, by the way, and therefore anybody who says they're a woman when they're obviously a man, or a man when they say they're obviously a woman, or somebody who has a penis claims he's a woman, or somebody who hasn't got a penis claims she's a man, or whatever, they are completely condemned. Of course, it's somewhere in the middle, and people should be allowed. I think actually they should create toilets and changing rooms for 3 different types: men, women, and those who wish to fit into neither but have their own category. Anyway, it was always a bit like this. The fascists in the old days, those who were always homophobes and anti-gays, are still furiously anti any kind of homosexuality, but have actually changed it around to being anti-paedophile. And they're finding great sympathy with that. The vast majority agree with it without knowing what a paedophile really is. That's somebody who finds someone below the age of consent attractive. Children, what is a child? Well, by definition, a child is a person under the age of 14, according to an act of government from years ago and never repealed. But it still is very easily confused by the homophobic media and people, but also those who basically really dislike certain types of people but aren't brave enough to say so and therefore cover it up. I've got to say, I feel that was a lot of Brexit, that there were lots of people who were basically racists and found Brexit a way of seeming to be sensible and reasonable, which actually was racist. But neither here nor there, let's move on and go back to the early days in the 60s, which I know and loved so well, when being gay was a crime, and actually it was only in 1967 that we bisexual or gay people were allowed to have sexual relationships with people of the same gender. Believe it or not, I mean, it seems incredible in 2023 that ever existed, but it was a crime which often was covered by death. If you actually chose to be one of the ones that was not allowed, you became a person who was condemned to being in prison, and often they committed suicide. Anyway, in that era, it's much forgotten now, but I was a huge champion for gay rights, obviously, being bisexual myself. I felt the whole thing was absurd, that women of the age of 16 or over could decide who they fell in love with and wanted to have relationships with, but with men it was completely illegal, and then from 67 onwards, only legal if you were both over 21. How stupid! So back in those days in the 60s, I was recording songs about being gay, which an awful lot of other stars later came along. David Bowie, Mark Bolan, Elton John, various people. But back in the 60s, nobody else did it. I did. And I remember I made one particular track called Gay Girl that was a huge hit in the clubs, in the gay clubs in the south of France, especially amongst lesbians, of course, Gay Girl. And it went down a storm. And you couldn't go to a gay club in the south of France in the 60s without hearing this pounding from all the speakers on the dance floor.
Gay girl, you are such a gay girl. You are such a high-flying, good-looking, groovy-moving, hippie-flippy gay girl. Saw you, met you, asked you for a date that night, said you really might come with me. Held you, loved you, left along the riverside, hand in hand and love and tide.
I'm always rather fond of that song, even though it was almost 60 years ago that I wrote and recorded it. So we look at the news and we see that people are upset at turning 40. Wait till you turn 78, darling. And the COVID vaccination scandal erupts. Now, I'm a pro-vax person. I've always taken the flu jab and it's been brilliant, stopping me getting serious flu. If I catch it, it only lasts 24 hours instead of 4 or 5 days. And I've had 6 COVID jabs since they started. But I've always avoided the AstraZeneca one. It worried me when they revealed that it had not been tested on anybody over 60. Surely us over 60s are the vulnerable people from COVID, so I wouldn't take an AZ jab to save my life. Looking in the papers, they're yet again having a go at the royal family. It's so absurd. You know and I know we're not fooled. We actually see that what's going on is the newspapers hate Harry, but especially Meghan, because she, poor dear, dared sue them and win. And that's the ultimate crime in the world of media. Actually, all that's been going on is a minor family disagreement between people, which will all be solved and got over. The media loves to hype and inflate everything it can, if it possibly can. I love the media. I'm a part of the media. I've been a part of the media for over 60 years. But even so, there are times when I despair of it. As we look at the rather lovely flowers around the area, let's face it, spring is here. It's almost May. See you in A Victim Bites Back 24. Ow!